Hello, everybody, and is here. So I haven't done surface stuff for a while now, so I decided to pick some type of so uh, like vehicle detail to practice a little bit. So I picked this like a starter model, found a few reference images on the internet, and started to model it inside 3D code. And I recorded a time lapse, so let's check it out with my commentary on. So I start with a new scene, and here pick a cylinder, so rotate it and change the scale, apply it to a layer, change my shader so it's a bit of a shiny metal. So I'll duplicate that layer, so now I have a background cylinder like saved on the background layer. Then I'm trying to increase the cylinder size using the pose tool, and here I don't know why uh, I wasn't able to pose this. So this is a new like 3D code version, a 3D code 0.52, and certain like in the new versions of 3D code, certain brushes and certain things is no longer behave like they used to behave. So it's always a bit of a hassle sometimes to get used to it. Anyway, so I'm just again here I was trying to use the pose tool like I would normally do in a previous version. Okay, here I actually managed to do it. I switched to a different. I was using a rectangular tool before, and now I used a brush. Where brush allows you to do this fall off and well fall off sculpting. So then I hid everything I was using box hide. I hid the outside volume, and now I'm unhiding so I can get this type of a hard surface profile. And I'm doing experiments should I do the holes or not. And all the while, I have multiple references on my second screen. So I'm doing box hide operations, looking at should I introduce more like ribs along the surface or not. So here I was using the cylinders a lot, obviously. So again, trying to pose it doesn't work out. Switching to different way of doing stuff. So you can either just scale it, but sometimes I just want to pose it because if you scale a model, then it's no longer uniform, and you have to make it a uniform mesh. So it's one extra hassle, one extra step. So sometimes I prefer to just use the pose tool to scale it. But in this particular version, I kind of failed. So here I'm trying to do this part where I have holes in four different parts of the model. So again, I hid the outer ring and then I unhid the inside, so that allowed me to get this nice hard surface profile pretty quick. I'm using here the XYZ symmetry. Quite often I would change to radial symmetry. I'm just trying to make sure. I think it's actually radial. It is a radial symmetry set at 4. That allows me to deal with that situation. So you can see it's a fairly low res cylinder. I should have really increased the density here, maybe like 3 times, so I wouldn't get those artifacts, which I had to later get rid of. And you'll see me having little artifacts here and there, like slightly unperfect mesh. It is possible to get rid of it. It is possible to do cleanup operations, trim off the edges and all that. However, usually it takes more time to do that. So I quite often just leave it. It's just like good enough. Don't want to care about it. However, I did fix that 4-hole part later on a little bit. So the top part is a solenoid, and the bottom part is the starter motor. And I pretty much googled the how the starters and the machines they working. So knew a few things about it. So again, I'm using the cube, and I made this cube out of a cylinder. Cut out the cylinder. Then I did a bunch of box hide operations, and got my hard surface profile in. This one was like easy peasy. This type of stuff is doing this 3D code is super easy. So yeah, I watched a whole bunch of videos on how the starters work, and some really cool animations in on YouTube, and that kind of really helps to understand what's going on. Though I wasn't trying to replicate any particular starter like photo. I have like 50 photos of them, but I was just like, okay, I'll just do something that looks like that with some kind of modifications that I want to introduce. All right, so we're using this part and then cut it and make it in thinner just by using the wax cut and removing the front part. I turned off the symmetry. I actually didn't. I forgot to turn off the symmetry, so I got this profile, which is actually, by the way, a really nice shape, commonly used in this hard surface in production. However, in this case, I just wanted to get the cut from the bottom. And I wanted to remove the top two holes. So for that, I cut them out. Then I'm using another cylinder. I'm rescaling it in place. So then I can merge it all together with voxels. And this is the thing, a really recurrent thing in this hard surface modeling, in just the voxel modeling I do, is that I'm reusing the parts constantly, and you can always combine voxels with voxels. You'll get a perfectly normal voxel mesh. So the best, usually sometimes the easiest way to fix something is actually just to merge two volumes together. And therefore, I usually have a lot of uh, backup volumes in my layer stack, which allow me to like go back to the original shape, then cut some parts here and there and combine them all together, and to get a new shape with a clean. I want to say topology, but not really topology. It's clean shape. There's no topology here, just all a mess of voxels and triangles. And I forgot the name of those little two cylinders I put in, and they will be like passing the electricity through. This is a little rod I made for, so like essentially for those bolts that go through and hold this solenoid in place with the housing. Here, tried again to use the post to make this part bigger because I'm kind of used to that from my usual hard surface modeling. But posing didn't work out again. So I just used the scaling and then had to turn it to a uniform mesh and then cut out the stuff I didn't want to have. So I did this angular cut and it didn't really look realistic. So then I cut out the top and decided to do a different profile, right? So doing like angular unhide, so like here from the front, and then I'm going to the side and doing a rectangular unhide from the side. So that gets you. So if you have some kind of order in your head of the ways you want, of the way you want to approach to do the detail, because unhide operations are like step operations. You do this first, you do that second, and in that way you unhide in certain sequence. You can get the really complex shapes. You do, however, have to. You usually don't get this sequence fast. You have to like try a couple times. So you try a few times, and then you undo, and do another sequence. So you think about it and experiment with that. That helps to get a better design. So just duplicating the roads across. So I'm changing the symmetry here. So here I wanted to create this cog that passes the motion to the bigger disk to start the motor. And I'm not a real mechanic, right? So I'm like just telling the terminology is probably not correct, but yeah, you have to have it. Like solenoid is pushing this out and clutches with the disk. And again, if you want to understand it better, just if you just check on YouTube like animation of a starter motor, you'll get an amazing cross section and amazing animation. One thing I'm doing a lot is I'm pressing F12 and I'm smoothing the model. Usually, I want to smooth the model because you do get this jagged edges all over the place. So you have to run smoothing a few times. Press F12. Well, that's my hotkey for smoothing, for the mesh smoothing. And however, you don't want to overdo it. In fact, you can just wait until you're finished, and then you would do the smoothing. So you can really just wait, and then when you combine everything, combine all the shapes, you'll do some smoothing. So here I'm reusing the parts from before and hiding half of the part and then unhiding to do a different structure. So here again, I'm hiding the circle in the middle and then I'm unhiding it and get a crazy complex profile in this case. And then if it doesn't look good, we can hide it, unhide it, hide it, unhide it, and experiment again. That's really the biggest power of 3D code, that you can change the shapes multiple times on the fly and see what looks good. And in that case, you get this kind of design experience in a matter of seconds versus any other software, really. Like it's hard to get a perfect mesh out of 3D code, but to get to get nice, cool designs, yeah, that's definitely the way to go. So here I turned on the symmetry to 8, radial symmetry to 8, and then I did that little operation that then also smoothed the whole model and got a nice little cap of a stamped metal in the back. Also, this model is going into pretty much high poly. I didn't capture the bottom of the screen, unfortunately, but the final model was going to be 15 million triangles, so it's pretty heavy. It actually was getting heavy as I was doing it. I should have actually turned a few parts to proxies, but since it was just like a 1 hour recording, yeah, it took me probably 80 minutes in total. So 1 hour, 20 minutes to do the whole thing. So I wasn't too concerned about doing everything like by the book. I usually would like turn some stuff to proxy. I would usually rename everything, group everything, so it's manageable. Right now, it's not really that manageable. Like for me personally, it was more of an exercise. I wanted I haven't done hard surface uh, exercise. I would hard surface small things. Haven't done them for a little while, so I wanted to just do this and to share with you guys and girls. Funny thing is that my channel is 99.9% male. Not many girls like 3D code. So I did this insignia. I was thinking about kind of logo that could have been stamped on that part, but eventually I got rid of it anyway. It just kind of looked fake. I just didn't add up much to the whole thing. Also, I could have done a pretty easy texturing on top of it, but honestly, I just wanted to do something quick, relatively quick, and it already took longer than I thought it would. I wanted to push something out in like 30 minutes, but I ended up spending three times more time. So I decided not to texture it. Like, it would have been nice to have a label or two on these parts, but I'll try to do more props in the future. So, in fact, my most popular uploads usually are about hard surface and 3D code. Though I always try to push new other areas of 3D code because it can do more than just hard surface designs. So I created the stand holding that solenoid at the top. This part I was trying to design the back parts, and I looked at a few references, and all the reference I found is kind of different. Uh, so you have the power coming in from the battery to one of those circuits, and then from another circuit goes to the starter motor. So it's trying different shapes. I mean, some of the shapes they look okay, but they might not look good with the overall design language. So if everything looks fairly realistic, you cannot really do a super sci-fi shape. It's like will go out, will not look in style. So in this case, everything looks pretty much like you would see on a modern vehicle. I mean, like so it's nothing sci-fi really. And that's, by the way, I wanted to do it. I wanted to do a bit more of exercising and using the real hard surface parts from real vehicles, so I get a better image, like a muscle memory of how that stuff looks. And again, I tried to use the pose tool and failed. Yeah, I need to figure out what's wrong with that. So this bottom cylinder looked too thin, so I decided to duplicate one, make it thicker, so it's like a housing for the motor is kind of bigger than the holding case. And then it starts to intersect with the rods that hold the cylinder. So then I'll go from the different side and hide those. All right, here I got back to that part because it's also the frequency of the detailing looked too detailed compared to the whole thing, right? So everything here is uh, not really detailed. So I wanted to keep it fairly simple, right? So you can see here I've cut through the that cylinder. Not sure when I did that, but I guess maybe I did a little pause and did a few cuts and forgot to record them. But not pretty much 95% of the process been recorded. So now I'm using a primitive tool and created this um, bolt, and then I'm using the screw. This is directly I'm directly using some reference for the reference I have from the starter motors. There's a copper screw which transfers the power, electricity. I'm just positioning it all correctly, just changing the material so it looks a little bit different from each other. In this case, I'm just using the standard metals inside 3D code, no custom materials. So here I'm using clone instance, clone, and I'm using the group. So you cannot just duplicate the group; it will only duplicate the top layer. So you have to use the clone command, and clone command didn't work here. So I had to use clone instance, so that allowed me to clone the whole thing. Uh, yeah, not sure why that happened. Sometimes when I was doing undo operation, the materials and some objects would revert to default. Default was set just before with some kind of muddy material. Don't know why that happens. Just a little bug when I was undoing certain things. So delete and undo the deletion. It would like go a bit nuts. And luckily, nothing crashed. Actually, nothing crashed at all during the whole process, which is pretty rare. Nothing crashed. There was no bug that forced me to uh, close 3D code and reopen it, which sometimes happens. Everything was pretty sweet with this model. So this release I'm using, like 4.9.52, is pretty stable. Though they keep doing some little changes to the brushes in here and there, which are kind of annoying. They just have this kind of idea that, okay, maybe this will be good. And I'm like, oh, why is it? Oh, by the way, here you can see a really funny bug. It's a completely clean mesh, but when I do an unhide operation, it unhid certain floating elements which I had then to cut out. But again, I was able to cut it out. Sometimes you're not even able to cut it out. So, but in this case, I'll just clean it out and whatever. Some bug. I mean, every 3D software has millions of bugs. If you pay too much attention to them, it's not great. You just want to clean it up and carry on. So here you can see I was deleting something, then undeleting, and that allowed that reverted through the materials to the default ones. Here I combined all of these parts together, and that allows me to essentially blend this seam edge, right? So then you can get this truly milled hard surface detail, on not milled but casted, with really nice highlights in place. Here I'm just like smoothing. Essentially, there's no way to control this blending, so we have to smooth it manually. And those casted parts I saw online, they're actually pretty slightly deformed. They're not perfect. So having some kind of deformation here and there is actually fine. It's actually even good to have it. So it's not perfect smooth. And that's really about it. So thank you all for watching, and let's see you in the next videos.